warming up because we got a lot to talk about. I'm warming up because it's the Wrestling Mat. What's up, everybody? You're probably hot enough. If you're in the United States or the Northeast, it's hot here. Who cares? Weather talk's boring as I drive people away. I'm Matt Camp. This is the Wrestling Mat. You want to talk about wrestling? You want to talk about fun things that are going on? This is the place to do so in the world of professional wrestling. You can always subscribe at thewrestlingmatshow.com. Shout out to Mike Riggs, the great Mike Riggs. What's up to him? What's up to everybody who has joined us here on this Monday? And if you've joined us for the very first time, welcome. Please subscribe at thewrestlingmatshow.com if you have not done so yet. Hello, Joseph. Hello, Philip. Thanks for checking out the show today. Hopefully you stick around. Hopefully you subscribed. If you haven't yet, do so at thewrestlingmatshow.com. We'd love to have you aboard. We're going to pass, if we haven't yet, I haven't checked out the numbers, but about to pass 4,500 subscribers. Very happy to be at those numbers, considering where we're at in the birth of this channel. I thank my entire team for making that happen, and we have a lot more to come, including this week, because SummerSlam is on Saturday, and I'm going to mention this a lot between now and Saturday, but our memberships are available. Some of you have subscribed, become a member already. If you subscribe, that's great. That's free. Anybody can go do that. We encourage you to do that. If you want some more, we'd love to have you aboard. Our memberships start at just $2.99. You can go check them out at thewrestlingmatshow.com. That takes you to our YouTube page. Just go right over to the memberships. You can find it. I'm sure we'll get a link in the comments here at some point. But that is where you want to head out. And $2.99 gets you in. We have 3 tiers, but any tier gets you into our SummerSlam watch party on Saturday. I'll be watching SummerSlam with you guys if you sign up on any tier. Now, we have the tiers like right above Todd. You'll get some access to AMAs. You'll get some priority comment replies from me. You will also get some discounts on our merch that will be coming out soon. If you're in the mid-card, you get even all of that plus more. You'll get some bonus content, my top 5 SummerSlam matches of all time, my worst 5 SummerSlam matches of all time. We will get into that, plus a lot more. And then on the top tier, the Matt event, we're going to follow you on our social media. I'm going to follow you on social media from the Matt Camp and from Wrestling Matt 23 on Instagram and Twitter. Some people have already gotten that follow. Congratulations to you. And you can take advantage of that in a couple different ways. We're also going to be letting you, one member a month, get a private AMA with me for 30 minutes. If you're in the Matt event, there is the link right there. If you're following along in the chat on YouTube, that's it right there. So go join, go check that out. Also, on top of that, in the Matt event, we are going to let someone every month pick an old event to watch, and we'll watch it all together if you're a member. All those things to go check out right now at thewrestlingmatshow.com. And as always, if you are listening live, I will respond to the comments, but super chats get you to the front of the line. So if you want to get a super chat in, you have a very pressing question, whether it be about our subjects today or something else, super chats certainly get priority, and we talk about them right away. Good way to help support the show. We'd love to have your support in any way. But yes, those memberships are now available starting at $2.99. Thank you for being with me here today. Not a heavy wrestling weekend that just passed us. I shouldn't say that. There was a lot of wrestling. Not a lot of, I guess, majorly newsworthy wrestling. AEW, since we last spoke, put on a taped Rampage. So that is the big piece of news. We're going to get into that. Taped Rampage. Darby Allin wins the Royal Rampage. And I knew that because of the spoilers, and I hinted around something. I'll now get into that in a little bit more detail. We also saw Death Before Dishonor. My goodness, Layla Hirsch and Diamante, go find a way to watch that match. Do it at Honor Club. Don't do it illegally. I'm not going to tell you that. But go do that. Go do that. Absolutely go do that. And then, of course, you had SmackDown on Friday, tape show. Bloodline's going to get their shot at the tag titles this week on SmackDown. Interesting. This week, not at SummerSlam. So DIY, Johnny Gargano, as of now, a Cleveland guy not getting to defend his titles on the Cleveland SummerSlam. Interesting. In addition to that, we saw Collision on Saturday night. I do want to talk about that a little bit because it's not necessarily about the content from the show, but what they're doing with the residency in Arlington. So all that stuff we're going to talk about. A couple of things, though. If you are just joining us or if you missed anything, last week we talked about CM Punk. Somebody just brought him up, my take on him. We'll get into that in briefly, but we talked about CM Punk as it relates to him being on WWE Backstage and the WWE reaction to that. Because remember, Backstage is a Fox show. Punk got paid by Fox, not by WWE. He gets paid by WWE now. I will want to talk about that. Well, we have talked about that, but we'll talk a little more about Punk because I did get that question from RM. We will get into that. That is a good question to ask, and I have a little time today to kind of go a little deeper on some of these other items that we didn't get to in detail. Also, last week, we talked about the partnerships with WWE, and I saw a lot of comments that people had back agreeing that, they're a big company, they're going to take whatever they need to. Some people saying, hey, listen, I have found TNA because of WWE. That's exactly what TNA wants. That is a good thing. I hope more people get to see different wrestling or people they didn't know about, people that know about Joe Hendry. And now they do. He's got a concert coming up tomorrow night. So we got into the partnerships and obviously, the stuff with Noah and the stuff with Marigold and Bloodsport. My goodness, she had the Creeds, both wrestle, work, fight, whatever. You had Charlie Dempsey. You had Shayna. Shayna won. Creeds won. Sorry, spoilers. Charlie Dempsey lost to Royce Isaacs. So interesting enough there. Interesting. But we talked about those partnerships and what they mean. Talked about Blood and Guts last week and what came out of that match. I didn't love the finish, but as I said, I liked everything else about that match except I thought the finish was a little slow. And I also said about that's the kind of match and how they did it. And it was the most wrestling psychologically involved match I have seen using a stip like that in quite some time. And I mean that in the best way possible. It wasn't violence for the sake of violence. A lot of stuff worked in and will take us out of other stories. So I talked about Blood and Guts, talked about Drew McIntyre and the Jack Perry picture and, Drew being bulletproof. I said it's a Nick Nemeth on Busted Open. When you get a sword from The Rock, you're good to go. You can put up those pictures. And yeah, it got deleted. But you know what? It stayed up long enough. You can read into the fact that there it is. It lives forever just like he knew it would. Just like he knew it would. Whenever it was taken, who knows? The image mattered all the same. Two of CM Punk's on-screen enemies. There you go. So here's what I'd like to talk about. I'll give you a tease. On Friday's show, I think it'll be Friday's show. Let's see. Tomorrow we'll have Raw. Wednesday, probably Friday's show. I'm going to tease this because I don't typically do this. Someone asked about Punk. Friday might be a very CM Punk heavy show. Because a topic we are going to discuss on Friday is the WWE reaction to Brawl Out, to the Punk presser, to what happened after, all that. And yes, CM Punk was right in the middle of that. We will talk about that. That'll be a Friday episode. I saw a question up there from RM. I think we're gonna go real heavy on Friday about Punk, as it leads into his first singles WWE match televised since he wrestled Billy Gunn on Monday Night Raw in January of 2014. Yes, he wrestled Dom on some house shows and all that stuff. His first televised singles match since he beat Billy Gunn on a Raw before that Royal Rumble, and then we didn't see him for a very long time. That's coming up on Saturday, so I'd like to go heavy on CM Punk on Friday, and we'll talk about Brawl Out and some of the stories going on about his restructure deal. Friday's going to be a very heavy Punk show, so I will get into it. But I did talk about Punk last week on WWE Backstage. You can check that out at thewrestlingmatchshow.com. RM, I appreciate that. I don't want to rush through it. There's a lot to get to on that. Friday's going to be a very Punk-heavy show heading into SummerSlam. Mike brought up his favorite SummerSlam matchup is 94, the WWE Championship between Owen and Brett inside of a steel cage. It's the best blue bar steel cage, and for those of you that are in the mid-card tier or higher, spoiler, that match is going to be on my top 5 SummerSlam matches of all time. It is so good. For those of you, and I like doing this for big pay-per-views, I like to go back and watch certain things as it relates to that. I always used to watch all the actual Rumble matches heading into the Rumble. But for SummerSlam, if you're trying to get into the mood for it or whatever, or you're a fan that checks in casually, go back and watch SummerSlam 94. Watch Brett and Owen. It is the story that began at Survivor Series 93 and continues on. It is so well done. It was not supposed to be a cage match, which I don't know if people know about. I'll talk more about that when I talk about it. Brett has talked about that, but it is a fantastic match. It is one of the only good brother versus brother feuds that happened in the ring. No, I'm not talking about the final deletion or anything like that. I'm talking straight up. Everything happened on screen. It's a great feud, and that match is so damn good. Go check it out. Go watch it. So a couple things I wanted to follow up on. And yes, I know we teased this as well. I am going to talk today about exactly how I ended up finding out about roles in WWE, how I applied, who helped me along the way. We are going to get to that. But I wanted to do a couple follow-up things from last week. First of all, on yesterday's Bloodsport, and if those of you who don't know, I don't want to assume everybody knows what this stuff is, because if it's not WWE or AEW, not everybody watched it. So Bloodsport is an offshoot of GCW, which is, I think, typically known for more of the deathmatch stuff. It's Cardona's the GM of it now, and Jinder showed up the other day, and Janela works there, and Chelsea was there, and it's a good mix. Danhausen's been there recently. Where's Danhausen? He's over here. So there he is. There's my buddy Danhausen. That's it, right? But if I do that, it'll bounce off and hit me in the face. Anyway, one of the best, hottest going indies right now. They're going international. They're going to Japan. So they have an offshoot, and it's Josh Barnett, who some of you may know from his MMA days. Some of you may know that he wrestled. Some of you may know that he did New Japan commentary. So he has what's called Bloodsport, and it's basically a work shoot of more MMA type fighting, grappling. There's kicking and stuff like that, but it's not your typical sports entertainment wrestling match. And it's allowed the people that have those kind of styles. So Shayna Baszler's been on a couple of them now, and that's a talent. That's a working agreement. Charlie Dempsey, who obviously leading No Quarter Catch Crew, William Regal's son, has popped up in TNA as part of those partnerships. He was on the show. The Creed brothers, who were fantastic wrestlers at Duke, now aligned with Chad Gable, former NXT Tag Team Champions, former Dusty Cup Classic winners, used to be part of Diamond Mine with Bivens, Stokely. They worked in singles on the show. No ropes, rings up. No, it's a ring without ropes. That's pretty much what it is. It's not for everybody. It's a mix of styles. It has that, you're in there not because you hate the other person. You in there because it's you both wrestle or you work or you do MMA or jiu-jitsu. It's that kind of respectful exhibition in that way. But there's matches and all that. So Barnett wins, and MVP, who has been in plenty of jiu-jitsu competitions and other disciplines, I believe, and from my talks with him, he shows up. And there he is. Not yesterday, but there he is. That's MVP, as we know. And basically says, I want a match in Bloodsport, challenging Barnett. My contract's up soon. And everybody, it's like, oh, he said his contract's up soon. Wait, Will, what voice do I have to do? The Danhausen voice? Sorry. He says, my contract's up soon. Now, the amount of people that I saw report, MVP confirms his contract's up soon. He went on a wrestling show and said that. In a company that is working with WWE to have WWE talent appear on the show. I don't get the word confirmed there. He can say whatever he wants, and it doesn't have to be true because he literally went on a wrestling show and challenged a guy to a fight, which is part of the show, a show that works with WWE. Now, I'm not saying his contract's not up because all indications are that is the case. And if he was allowed to just do that, sure. But in no way, shape, or form should anyone go, well, MVP said that. That's confirmation. It's wrestling. No one has to tell the truth. It's nobody's damn business. Sure, he played into it. Now, very well could be done and very well could show up in the next Bloodsport. I'm just saying, nothing he said should confirm anything. He went on a wrestling show and talked. just take it with a grain of salt. That's all. No, the all goal just asked, do I think it's a work? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if MVP was allowed to show up there and he's still within contract, he was allowed to show up there. His contract still could be running out in August. And he, you know what? It might have just been, hey, we have no ill will. You're going out this way. He might have said, I'd like to do this. Josh asked me, is that okay? And if he's going out the door, he's going out the door. It's not like it happened on WWE television, and it won't be rebroadcast tonight on Raw or anything like that. I'm just saying, don't go by a guy saying whatever he's saying about his contract on a wrestling show and go, well, that's the confirmation. No, it's not. There's a great way to get worked. Whether he's telling the truth or not, it's not gospel if he goes on a wrestling show and gets on a wrestling microphone and says something about his deal. That's all I'm saying. Now, Dom, I don't know if we have this, but Montez Ford put up a very telling Instagram post on Friday. There it is. He put this up. This is just a piece of it. I'll get the rest of it. This was to promote this match. And by the way, if you want to know the state of tag team wrestling that I talked about, look at this picture. Put it up one more time, Don. Who has been on any kind of roll of these 6 teams? And by the way, this is absolutely not a knock on any of these guys. Pretty Deadly is a comedy act that just tries to talk to Nick Aldis all the time. They're good workers. They should be in a bigger spot. The Good Brothers bounce around. They lost in NXT recently. I'll get to Montez and Dawkins in a second. Angel and Humberto have had this backstage feud, basically, with Apollo Crews and Corbin, who have been thrown together. At least Corbin deserves more than that, and I think, Apollo's bounced around enough. And then you have the former Guerrillas of Destiny, who haven't really even tagged together. Think about that, because they haven't. Actually, I'd love to know that answer. Have they, even on house shows, have they tagged? This is where I go to Trusty Cage match here and try to get this answer very quickly for us. But that tells you a lot. Like, you look there and you go, those are the top contenders for the SmackDown tag team titles, basically. How many times have you seen those teams wrestle that often? I mean, seriously. I'll get to the actual, active team on there in a second. All right, let's see. Anybody have guesses? I'd love to know. This is great stuff here for me that I should have looked up beforehand. All right. How many times have the former Guerrillas of Destiny tagged? As a 2-man team, they beat the Profits on May 31st. Man, they've been there that long already. They were in a 6-man tag on SmackDown at the beginning of June. They've worked 1, 2, 3 6-man tags with Solo in the month of July. And KO and Sammy beat them to end the Japan tour 2 days ago. They've had one match on television as a tag team. And then they won the gauntlet. That is the state of tag team wrestling. It's not good. Will said, I think they're dropping the ball. I did a whole thing about this also from, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago about how tag team wrestling is friggin' dead right now. And it's not just in WWE. It ain't pretty right now in AEW either. The Bucks and the Acclaim will try. It's not the staple that it used to be of AEW. And I'm not talking about, well, these 2 main eventers tag together, and I know they do 6-mans and they do 8-man, and that's fine. I'm talking about straight up 2-on-2 tag team wrestling. It doesn't mean as much. Don, put that Tez thing up again if you could, please, and I'll read the rest of it. So Tez put this up ahead, and leave it up for a sec. I'll tell you when to take it down. Tez put this up. All right, tape show. He put this up on Friday. Tape show. He knows he's losing. I appreciate this is the anti-boo-boo face, which, by the way, Nick Nemeth the other day confirmed is a real thing. And by that is, if you come out and it looks like you're losing because the expression on your face, no one should know that. So this is Montez hyping up a match. He knows he didn't win because it was taped. So there's the whole post. Tired of having company around that don't care. Tired of the world not knowing who we are. Tired of every version of the bloodline. I'm reading the rest of this because it gets cut off. Tired of not being a champion. We lost a lot this year from family members and even up to this week, our own leader. Straight up telling you, Bobby Lashley. At least now, Montez acknowledging it, gone. But we're not, and he says, effing losing tonight. They did. So tonight on God, I wake up, you wake up, and the world will know our names once again. We are the MF and Street Profits, and we will be your next WWE Tag Team Champions. Because I wasn't born to be tired. I was born to win. Test. Then they lose. You can take it down now, though. Then they lose. If it's as simple as I just said, don't get worked by MVP saying what he said, just in case. That dude is trying to hype up a match he ain't going to win. That dude, and I'm, once again, I feel Tez completely. There's a lot of acknowledgement of what's going on. And if you don't think that hasn't heard for probably 2 years how much the company has dropped the ball on not making him a single star, believe me, one thing I will tell you, that the majority of people, even though some of them are millionaires and are on top of the world, unless they never look at their phone, they know what's going on. They read the reports. They don't miss anything. The amount of people from WWE have been like, hey, keep it up. I love watching your stuff. I love to hear it from you. They're paying attention. It's not a me thing. If you're tagged in enough stuff, whether it's credible, whether it's somebody trying to get clicks, they see it. Tez is seeing it. Dawkins is seeing it. I guarantee that. How could they not be frustrated? Here's a random tag you get thrown in. Here's a backstage. Listen. I said this the other day on Post Wrestling. I'll say it. You're bitter. No, I'm just telling you my story. And as much as I loved working there, I didn't want it to end. And yeah, you do get frustrated at times because you creatively, run into stuff that's annoying or you don't get stuff. I was always doing something. I never had a reason to complain working there. The creative wasn't always good. I had to talk through some garbage, but my job was to talk about professional wrestling for a living and get paid very well by that company to do so. But I was always doing something. You keep doing the same thing over and over again and you're not creatively fulfilled, you can collect that check. You could provide for your family. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with not getting used and resting your body or, hey, we need you to work this house show this weekend, but that's it. Or, hey, can you go down to NXT? It's only a drive. Yeah, sure. You can feel that way. And being on every week and all that, sure, doesn't mean it goes anywhere. Listen to the crowd reaction or lack thereof for the Street Profits right now. That's got to be frustrating. That used to be a thing. Here come the Profits. I recently talked about how, Enzo and Cass, when they were getting hot, a perfect opening show act. Saw them multiple times open up NXT house shows. People love it. The Profits have that same kind of energy. But it seems to have dissipated amongst the fans because they're not going anywhere. And all the stuff with Bobby, just let's turn them heel. You want to turn Montez Ford heel and they beat up Rey Mysterio and it didn't work. It didn't work. They beat up a beloved babyface and it didn't work. And then they just kind of flounce. I guess they're babyface. We'll put them up against Final Testament because they're. It's hard to get creatively excited when your creative sucks and it's just going in a circle, in a vicious, boring cycle. So if he's hyping up the match, okay. If there's a tinge of realism to what he was saying, I get that too. God, it's not like they're lighting the world on fire with single stars on SmackDown right now. They're not. And even if they were, my goodness, you don't let that one go to waste. Dawkins could also, I've said this plenty of times, they can both be singles and still be friends. That's a thing. It's mind-boggling when they have to break up a tag team. No, you don't. So I read that from Tez, and I think there's a level. He's going to write that knowing what people will react and how they'll react. He knows what he's doing. He's been around. And good. If he got any kind of juice behind that crappy put-together match, good for him. On a tape show, it was a solid match. If he got any kind of interest in that match, which is not exactly loaded with, big stars. And I say that in terms of how they've been perceived, how they've been presented as of late. There's a lot of great wrestlers in that match. But if I look at that and I go, all right, it's Bloodlines to lose. It was two teams that were going to win that thing. Either the Profits against DIY, which didn't make sense, or the Bloodline against DIY, which we're getting this Friday. It was the opposite of having a boo-boo face. He could have said nothing. He could have said, hey, we're in this match. He put some effort in. Dawkins, posted about it also. It's doing your job. But, man, I don't know how much passion can be behind that kind of stuff. Those guys deserve better, and they're leaving a lot of money on the table by not doing more with them. And they're leaving a significant amount of money on the table by not making Montez Ford a major single star. He's put in the work to get bigger. He has made every appearance you could ask of him on behalf of the company. He was there when TKO rang the bell on the New York Stock Exchange. Why wouldn't you want him and Bianca front and center? Outstanding representatives of the company. And yet, you don't do more with that guy. That's something's getting lost in translation there. Because there's obviously people that know, hey, we could put him and Bianca out there to represent the company. We could send them to UFC events. We can send them to a major event like that. Bianca's already established. Bianca has main event at WrestleMania. Bianca has an unreal resume already. If you see that much in Montez as a face of the company in that way, then why aren't you pushing him as such? How many mid-carders do you see get that kind of presentation on a regular basis? Sure, you could have Pretty Deadly go through the first pitch out at a Mets game, or you could have people make little appearances here and there. I'm talking Montez is out there front and center a lot. They gave them a Hulu show. You see a lot of him, and yet you don't see enough of him as a single star in the ring, and that is mind-boggling to me. And hell, you know what? What's Drew and Punk doing right now? They're playing off of real-life stuff. I just gave you the backdrop to the Montez push. You know what I'd love to come... To really launch that, and who knows? Maybe this is a post-SummerSlam thing, and maybe I'm also just hoping. That's a guy I want to see come out with no fanfare, with no music, with a mic, and to talk about the things I just said. What do I got to do? Not a heel promo, because he shouldn't be. Not a heel, but to come out, and if he came out without the fanfare, people would take notice right away. Corey and Wade. What's Montez Ford doing out here? He was supposed to be here tonight. What's going on with him? What? And he gets in there and he talks about all that. Talks about his great tag team run. Talks about how it's great to be alongside his brother in life, in wrestling, whatever in Angelo. No issues with him. How proud he is of his wife. How he gets to stand by her side. And how he's done everything to come. You go all that and go, when's my chance? I got one chance. I got an elimination chamber. You let me fight Roman Reigns once. You let me fight Seth Rollins once. What else do I have to do? I don't care about anybody else. Everybody makes their own path. I'm not mad at people making their own path, but I've been passed over enough. What do I have to? That is a conversation that, honestly, if you really want to make it work, he skips over Nick Aldis and he walks right back into Triple H's face and says something. Because when you use the GMs like you do, whether it's Pierce on Raw or Aldis on SmackDown, those are your regulars. Everybody can go to them. Everybody can talk to them. But if Montez is serious enough, you have him on camera go right to Triple H. You have him cut that promo, walk out the ring. You do that follow shot that everybody's, oh my goodness, it's amazing that they follow a guy. Yes, it looks good. It happens in a lot of places. They've changed up cinematography in a good way. You follow him right through that curtain. You follow him right in the Triple H face. What else can I say to you? What else can I do? What do I have to do? You hear those people. You see social media. Everybody's talking, and you play into that. You make it real. And I guarantee that will work. I guarantee a singles push of any kind will work for Montez. Now, he's got to go back it up in the ring. I get that. But I believe in him. And when you have the kind of crowd reaction that he has gotten, whether they've been booked well, it's dropped off a little bit because they're just running in circles. But I think Montez has something very big in him, and it's weird. It's not me picking out. So I like this guy. Who doesn't think that? Who doesn't think that guy can be a massive star? Who goes, Montez? I don't know. So let's see. But being in turmoil matches for the 97,000th time when they've already won all the tag titles, you need a shot of life like Montez on SmackDown. The main event is what it is. And I know people aren't totally sold on Solo Sikoa fighting for the world title against Cody Rhodes at SummerSlam this weekend. LA Knight, Logan Paul, going to finally see it. Randy and KO, okay. But, man, don't miss on Montez. Don't. That would be a shame. So we'll see. But there's a chance to use a lot of real life stuff. Bobby leaving, how he's been presented, all that. There's a lot to go with there. I'll stay on WWE and we'll get into the more of the AEW stuff later because I've been asked about this. It's been comments. How did I end up in the WWE? How do you even get there? Was I called up? Was I plucked from somewhere? And that happens too. So here's how it started for me, because we're talking about this today because it's basically the 5-year anniversary of me getting hired. I started there in September of 2019. So it happened around this time, getting close to it. But the process is something I think people don't know about, may want to know. So here's my process. I had always been a fan. I think you can hear that in my voice and see what's behind me and all that. I mean, I go back as a fan to being 5 years old. So it was always like, I wonder how that can be, how I can get there. And funny enough, because I just saw somebody mention it, I did want to write for WWE. And then I listened to enough podcasts and stuff with former writers and heard the whole process. And I was like, that doesn't sound so fun. Not how it currently is or was laid out. It sounds a lot different and better now because Vince isn't running the show. And you don't have to wait 6 hours for him to answer a call or whatever. But I thought that would, maybe be a cool in, and I pushed it aside. So my career went into more football, and I did fantasy football and all that stuff. And I was always a wrestling fan, and, Busted Open popped up. And when I was doing radio on Sirius for my now second run with the company, I was doing fantasy football stuff. But I knew wrestlers that liked fantasy football, and I would always try to work stuff in. I'd put wrestling theme music, and we'd have, my producer was a wrestling fan, so we would segment things that were kind of wrestling related. I would make references, but that's it. That's as far as it went. And my kind of intro to more of the wrestling business side of things was a couple of wrestlers listened to my Sirius show, and then I ended up going to TNA shows. And I'll talk more about that another time, but I met Jeff Jarrett, and yeah, if you wonder why I've talked about Jeff a lot, I go back with Jeff to 2017. No, it's got to be even more than that. It's at least 7 years. It's probably 7 to 10 years with Jeff. I've probably known Jeff for a decade. And I became friends with a lot of people in TNA and blah, 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 blah. And I would go to their shows. Never worked for them, nothing like that. But I was very in with TNA people. Trying to think, maybe it is like 10, 12 years ago now. Pretty good time for the company. Storm and Bobby Roode and Aries, Jeff Hardy. They were doing, Abyss was feuding with Bubba. A lot of good stuff was happening. A lot of top tier names. Samoa Joe, EY. It was good. It was a good show. So I was just going to those shows. So I had made friends, and I started a fantasy football league with a bunch of TNA wrestlers. Brian Kendrick was in it, and Frankie Kazarian was in it, and Brian Hebner was in it, and a few others. Ken Anderson, the former Mr. Kennedy, I talked into being in the league. We had a good solid league because they already had a league already. Like Jarrett ran like an office league. And the second year and that allowed me to have wrestlers on my show. Adam Pearce played in our league. Multiple years, the Weekend Warriors League. So that allowed me to have an excuse to have wrestlers on my show. And Dreamer this is probably the year or two after we started those leagues. Dreamer had done some stuff with TNA. And Jeff brought me out to his house once to be like his fantasy football consigliere. He flew me out, and that's a whole weird, funny story. But Dreamer was supposed to be there, and he couldn't. He had some kind of family emergency or something like that. So I didn't get to meet Tommy. And I had grown up watching Tommy, and I owned the Innovator Violence Red t-shirt and all that stuff. And he was doing media to promote House of Hardcore, which is his promotion I would end up working at. And I tried to get him on. He was doing media, and I had an off-season football show, and I was like, we could do whatever we wanted. And he DM'd me after it was over. He's like, oh, sorry, I missed you. Would love to come on another time. So I had him on again, and he's a huge sports fan, to the point that he kind of roots for everybody. And we talked further, and he's like, anytime you want to come to a show, let me know. And I was in the Philly area, so, Tommy and I hit it off, and we ended up in fantasy leagues together. He's like, I'll be in yours if you be in mine. I was like, absolutely. And I started to go to House of Hardcore shows just to watch. And I knew enough people there, and, I think I had met AJ through TNA, and they ran a show in Philly, and he was IWGP champion, and I had met Daniels and Kazarian and, talked to them. So I knew enough people that I was not just a random fan to them, and there was the respect level, because I never tried to push hey, I like wrestling. Can we talk about it? It was always like, hey, you want to talk football with me? Sure. By the way, anytime, and I'm not saying it works for everybody, you meet a wrestler, talk about one of their shared hobbies, not wrestling. I guarantee you'll get probably a better conversation. And that's what it was to me. I was able to just kind of mingle and talk to people and be around wrestling, and talk about football. And I went to enough of those shows. I think I've mentioned this before, but because I went to those shows, Vic Joseph, NXT commentator, had done indie stuff, had worked for CBS radio in Cleveland. Him and I hit it off, and we did fantasy leagues together, and he would come on my show on Sirius and talk about the Browns, and I would go on his show in Cleveland and talk about fantasy, and we were, we hit it off because of that. And he would eventually get hired, I think, as everybody knows, and he's still calling NXT to this day, as you'll see him tomorrow night with Booker T. So we kept in contact in late 2018, maybe October. He had asked if I was interested, and I was like, I was working for Bleach Report at the time. I was the lead fantasy football analyst for them. I was doing a lot of on-camera stuff. Once again, working on a lot of fun, random wrestling stuff and things like that. And I was doing Sirius and hosting the Game Day show. If anybody remembered that, it was basically like Red Zone on the radio, 6 hours every Sunday. And I had a weekend show, and I was doing well in the fantasy world, making good enough money. But, Vic would keep up with me. Hey, are you interested? And there was a host role, and I didn't know what it was, really generic. And it was basically an Orlando-based host role. You would do, the live house shows, and you would host, and you'd fire up the crowd. And he's like, you got to move to Florida. I don't know what the guarantees are. I was like, nah, I'm good. And then he said, you should talk to Tom Phillips. Tom Hannafin, obviously working alongside Matt, John McKing, former Aiden English, and TNA now. Tom's fantastic. And Tom was right in the middle of his run at WWE. Doing well. And had called all the shows, and, him and Graves are still one of my favorite commentary teams ever. Man, they just clicked. So Tom happened to live somewhat close to where I did, and it connected us, and I met Tom for a beer, and we talked. And we hit it off on a lot of things in sports and football and fantasy football. And Tom's a big Penn State guy. He does his podcast still for the last few years. And passionate about that, but way more passionate about wrestling than I think people realized. You wouldn't have known he knew as much about all kinds of wrestling because you just heard him on WWE. And at that point, it was very much you got to follow rules as a commentator, and you only say these things, and you got to get out of these bad habits and all that. And Tom did all kinds of stuff. He was on the second screen. He was getting messed with by the New Day. He called every show you could call, and went up and down and fell out of favor and back into favor. And I don't think they handled him well. I don't think he ever should have got fired. That was ridiculous. They're still looking to replace him, honestly. He was the correct heir apparent to Michael Cole. And I know they hired Joe Tessitore, and Corey's doing a good job. Tom's excellent. And I think in current day WWE, if Tom wasn't forced to follow the rules he was forced to follow, and the commentary book that was like this big of what to say and what not to say and how to say it, and you're playing to Vince and KD. Tom should have been the guy who was, and maybe he still will be. Maybe they'll wake up and go, damn, he's good. We have this partnership, but what that guy? Oh yeah, you had that guy. Anyway, Tom was very nice, very helpful to me. He said, hey, listen, I'll keep a heads up. So I see a role in, I want to say early 2019, a logger position where basically it said remote next to it. And I was in my football off season. I was like, hey, this would be cool. Like, you just got to log highlights or stuff for the network. I could do that from wherever. It said remote. So I reach out to Tom, and he gets a hold of somebody, and it's like, oh no, it was just in the remote office. You got to live up there. All right, that's out. He's like, but I'll keep looking for you. So I think we got to like May, maybe early June. I want to say May of 2019. And I was keeping an eye out, and whether I saw it or it popped up on a wrestling website somewhere, digital talent, on-air digital talent. That was the job title. And I saw it. And before I could message him, he texted me. He said, apply for this job right now. I said, okay. So I did. Now, here's the fun thing. If you ever used Workday for any of those people and you have to sign up on every different company's Workday, I did that. And I fill out the very generic stuff, your name and where'd you go to school and all. And then when it went further, it was talk about your WWE fandom, if you have any. So I basically was like, what's your favorite storyline? And I had a few, but I knew the one I could write out and verbalize the best is basically Shawn Michaels winning the 1995 Rumble, losing to Diesel at WrestleMania 11, turning babyface right after that because Sid turns against him. He comes back. He's a babyface. You know, the stuff with Jeff Jarrett, the stuff with Owen, getting knocked out, you know, having to battle his way back from being a heel to becoming a babyface to putting him out on his own to coming back at the 96 Rumble to win it. And now he goes in and they tell the whole boyhood dream story. And you got Jose Lothario with him and he wins and so I basically said, you know, Shawn from Rumble 95 to WrestleMania 12 is one of my favorite stories. How you built a mid-card heel who had all the talent but wasn't quite ready. And then turning him into the next babyface of the company and Brett putting him over. I wrote that out. Okay. So I'm waiting. I check with Tom and he hits up and he goes, okay, I know people have seen it. I've kind of tried to nudge people along. I think you'll hear something soon. So I remember getting ready to go to a Phillies game or something with friends, and I get a call from like a Connecticut area code, Stanford area code, whatever it was. And it's the HR rep who was in charge of hiring. That's all the person's job was. Hey, we'd like to talk to you, blah, blah, blah. Okay, sure. So it's a very basic, like, would you be willing to move or could you commute? And at that time, I was 2.5 hours away. I said, you know, I'll make it work. Say everything I'm supposed to say, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we'll let you know. Very HR-y kind of stuff. This was not a wrestling person. This was not somebody I was going to work for. This was the first step in terms of an interview. So I do that first interview, and I wait, and I get told, okay, and this is right during it's like June, July, so people are taking time off. They're on personal time off, PTO. I keep getting told, listen, we want to schedule something, but the hiring manager's busy. Okay, fine. I understand that. And I finally go, okay, we scheduled something. So I remember like saying like, I will make time. And I was playing golf about an hour from my house and I knew I had to get home back for this interview. And I don't make it. I get hit traffic and I have to like pull off into a like side parking, like some kind of shopping center, and it's in a terrible reception area, and I keep getting disconnected from the hiring manager, and I'm like, oh my god, I can't. And I took the interview in a Burger King parking lot, and finally found good enough reception, and I'm talking to him about it. And this is somebody who, you know, was the number 2 person in digital. I didn't know his name. I had looked him up and was trying to find out more about him, and he's detailing everything, and he knew my wrestling fandom and had seen my stuff, and he starts telling me about what was going to become the bump. He's like, we're thinking about doing the show, and I think Kathy Kelly's going to host it, and it's going to be a weekly talk show, and it might go more than one day a week, and it might go, you know, we'll talk about Raw and SmackDown, but it might branch out. He goes, do you know all the products? I said, I know NXT, I know UK. He goes, we might talk about that stuff. And he goes, honestly, you know, we know AEW's coming up soon, and it hadn't debuted with Dynamite yet, because that debuts the same day the bump does in October of 2019, a few months later. And I said, sure, I'll talk about that too. I said, you know, I had done a New Japan podcast and all that stuff. And it went well. And he's like, okay, a lot of people are still off. We want to get you in there to do some screen tests, some on-screen stuff. Okay. So I just got to wait. And then I get the date. I think it was like end of June, maybe early July. And I drive to Stanford. I don't know where I'm going. I didn't even know they had multiple buildings. There's the one that I guess a lot of people would have seen for years on 95. That's on the right side off exit 9. And now the bigger building is a couple exits south across from the train station. That's the main HQ. So I knew about that one, but they're like, oh no, you're going to this one. I was like, where am I? I didn't go to Titan Towers for my interview. I went to the digital building, which is right next to the TV building, which is where you've seen a million things. The TV building is that guy right there doing WWF Mania or Live Wire or any of those Coliseum. Did you get free gift videos with all the tape machines behind him and Macho Man? And they shot the Edge and Christian show in there. And, you know, anytime you've seen Scott Stanton for the last 15 years, he's been in there in the green screen studio. And that's when I was there, did Raw Talk and SmackDown Lowdown from there. They shot interviews in there. You know, all kinds of stuff happened in that building. And that TV building is, you know, where all the TV main production people had their offices. Down the road was Titan Towers. Now everybody's under one roof in that brand new HQ, which you've probably seen a lot of. So I go to this digital building, and they had only been in there for like a month at the time. Everybody had been at Titan Towers. So I get brought in, and okay, you're going to meet with a few people that work in our digital department that are producers or whatever. Okay, and that's all I knew. I knew that. But the funny thing was, a few days before the interview, I get told you're going to do an on-screen test. And this is back to the HR person who's not a wrestling person. You're going to do a WWE Now. Are you familiar with that? And that's what, at the time, Kathy was doing them. Ryan Popola was like her backup. And then, you know, Mackenzie took that over. And I said, yeah. So I got a script. And I wasn't told anything. And I asked what to wear. Wear what you think you should wear. This is what they told me. And I'm going, okay. And the idea was like, present yourself as you think you'll be presented on these shows. So I look at them enough and go, okay, it's a bomber jacket and t-shirt. And that's what I showed up in, which I would end up wearing for the next 5 years, basically. That's what it was. And the night before, I wasn't told about teleprompter. I wasn't told about. I was just told, hey, you're going to do the script on camera. They change it the morning of. Actually, you're going to do this one instead. So I leave. I get this email. I had to leave very early in the morning. I pull over at a Wawa. I record myself on a voice memo or recording saying the script. And then I just listened to it the whole ride, just so it would be stuck in my head. So when I got up there, I'd go, I can say it. And whether that was an intentional way to mess with my head or it was just, oh, actually, we gave you the wrong one, I don't know. It was WWE. Who knows? I didn't have to sell a pencil or anything like Renee did. But this was digital. This wasn't a TV gig. And there was a difference. So I get there and I get pulled into a room and I get interviewed by 2 producers and a director. And that was the weekend. I can't remember what pay-per-view it was. Might have been Extreme Rules, something like that. But they did Watch Along, and that's where Corbin hit McAfee or Matt Hardy, or one of both of them hit McAfee because Pat was doing Watch Along at the time with a kendo stick. And I never watched Watch Along. Never. But I watched that one. And the director who's in there ran Watch Along. So we're talking about, and I bring that up, and he's like, wow, you watched that? And I was like, oh, yeah, sure. I had my second screen and blah, blah. Once again, if you're getting into any stuff like this, know the product, know what you're talking about. Even if it's stuff you don't like, whether it's wrestling or entertainment, know what you're walking into and be familiar. Because if you speak that way, it's going to make an impact. And I guarantee, and I know for a fact, they brought in people who didn't know wrestling. And that was typical WWE hiring practice. We don't necessarily want wrestling people. We want good personalities who walked in there and didn't know. There was someone who ended up getting hired there who bombed so badly and only got hired because someone else moved on. And there was a different role for that person, but didn't know the product enough. And I heard that story and I was absolutely baffled by it. So I have this interview and talk about, my experience. Someone in that room had worked for Bleacher Report when I was there, so there was familiarity with me, but we had never worked together. A producer who had done road stuff, who has also since moved on. 2 of the people that in that room don't work there anymore and haven't for years. So, I like doing interviews. I like being in that spot. I get told, okay, we're going to bring you out. and there was no real set, and we want you to do this WWE now. And don't worry about missing lines. We edit it and all that. And all of a sudden I went, oh, God. So I do it. And if you saw the bump promos, that's what that was. My screen test for WWE before I got hired, mine, everybody who was on the show, their first screen test ever. So even Kayla, who had already been working there, they used her interviewing Pete Dunne when she had different hair and bangs to here. And everybody's first screen test for the company was used as the promos for Bump, and they kept it mysterious. So, like, they showed me, like, looking off to a script and coming back, and it's all my and that's how they promo, and they wanted it to be ambiguous. So I do that, and it went fine. It was actually one that Ryan Pola did. I remember watching that WWE Now. It was about, I said something like, Kevin Owens is going off. I mean, really going off. And then I get taken to another part of the digital area. Once again, I got a tour. I saw what became the Bump Studio that day, and it was being built to be the Up, Up, Down, Down Studio, which Austin Creed, Xavier Woods, my buddy right here, and I would then feud about months later. Little did I know, but they were still building this new digital office out. And I get taken basically to the opposite side of the building. I got set on a couch, and they go, hey, we want to do this segment about this talk show, and we'll just talk about what's going on in WWE. And at the time, this is why I saw the things lately. This is what was going on. Truth, Drake, 24/7 title, the wedding, the chasing, Drake in his underwear, all that stuff. So that's what we talk about. And I talk about Drake being in his underwear, and they get that outtake, and that ends up in something later on. And I basically did like a talking Bump segment with someone who ended up being one of the producers and editors on the show. He just sat next to me, and we shot the shit about it. And that was it. And they were like, that was great. I heard a lot of good things, but you never know. And then I had to sit and wait for a month. And you will have to sit and wait for the rest of that story, because there's more to it, and a lot of changes happen, and I don't have the time to get into it today. So that will be coming. There will be a part 2 of that. But that is the early process. But I had to wait. And I also had to see other people on social media post about showing up there, because I didn't know if it was one job. I thought it was. I thought it ended up being 4, which then none of us work there anymore. But we'll get to that at another time. Interesting tweet about SummerSlam tickets. I don't know if we have this, Tom. But from a Twitter account called Under Face Value. They track this kind of stuff. And this was brought to our attention by our good friend Rob over the weekend. This is very interesting. And I know this is, once again, not a knock. They've sold 50,000 seats. But it shows you how much that WWE has priced up the tickets. It's quite wild, in fact. Here, Under Face Value is the Twitter accounts. Their bio is exposing cheap tickets, pricing inconsistencies, and other peculiarities across the ticketing ecosystem. Hashtag pays to wait, which is kind of their thing. So they have the current seat map of SummerSlam. And it says, what will WWE scale down these prices to move the remaining prime inventory at SummerSlam this Saturday in Ohio? Sections A and B, and as you might guess, those are the ringside ones. So A and B, as you can see, prime spots. And a closer look, just to show you, these are all the available seats. Look at all the blue on there. Look where the ring is. Look at all the blue seats. There you go. Thank you, Dom. A little easier for you guys. So look at so A and B, which is those 2 blue squares next to the black ring there. and then the zoomed in seat. Look at all of the tickets that are currently unsold at $900 a pop. And then look at F, G, H, and J. Also around the ramp, around the ring. Those are $550 each. Look at all the blue. Look at around the ring. The majority of A and B are not sold right now. That show is on Saturday. Those are tickets they don't want to have unsold. So now, as Rob pops up, people will be moved from the higher speed. Rob and I have done this. Rob and I would go to shows. Rob is a childhood friend. Rob and I would go to shows, and we would buy obstructed view seats. I learned this trick early on. I learned this. I'll tell you the first time I learned this. I learned this for the Monday Night Raw where Kane lost his mask. It was 2 days before I graduated high school. I bought obstructed view seats the day of Raw at the Garden, and I got moved. And I got moved to right next to the ramp for $15 because they don't want those seats filled. They don't want those seats to be unfilled. The first ECW taping for WWE happened in Trenton. The seats I bought with my friend were up in the corner with the Tron next to us. And this is when they used to have that little ECW set, that gray set that they would bring out because they would tape before SmackDown. So initially, I got moved 2 different times. I got moved because of where the ECW set was. They thought, oh, well, you don't have to be here. And they moved us across, and then they moved us right next to the stage. I got moved twice that night just to fill out seats. Now, life is different these days. They're still selling a bunch of seats. I think it's at 50,000. Also, by the way, Nerdy Dude, welcome as a new member. Thank you to have you from Germany. We love the international flavor here on this show. Thank you for being a member. We'll see you on Saturday for SummerSlam. Now, if you're trying to go to SummerSlam, you may want to wait. As the hashtag said there from that account, pays to wait. That has been a big topic of discussion, as well as everything is doing. Man, it costs a lot to go to those shows now. And they're pricing that because it's SummerSlam, and I get that. But look how many seats are not sold at that high face value range. I'm interested to see if we hear anything about that. And I know WrestleTix will keep up on this. I know, Thurston from WrestleNomics will keep it up on that. But my goodness, and listen, I get it. AEW's, attendance is down. And they're not selling as much. And people have said those tickets are too high. And those tickets tend to drop, or you get 2-for-1 sales or family. And everybody does that. But those are very high-priced, important seats to fill. There you go. Put that proof comment up there if we could. I've been to so many events, and the current pricing plus the crazy Ticketmaster fees keep me away from these events. You're going to have your hardcores for anything in wrestling, any company, that are willing to pay those prices. But that is a big chunk of seats. Tom, can you put that up one more time, the whole seat map? If you could, not the comment, that seat map, if you could. Because I want to just remember, the blue tickets are not sold. Next to the ring, down the sides of the entrance, this is a lot of prime real estate that you're going to see on TV, and they're not sold. And they've sold 50,000 seats. I think that was the WrestleTix update, like earlier today. But a lot of prime high-level seats are not sold yet. So if you're looking to go, and you're in the area, just wait a little bit, because I would think they want those tickets sold, and they're going to find ways to sell them. Although if you're home, you should be joining us at thewrestlingmatchshow.com for SummerSlam, because if you're a member, starting at just $2.99, 3 tiers, but it starts as low as $2.99, you can watch SummerSlam with me on Saturday right here at thewrestlingmatchshow.com. And anybody who's comment will be talking the whole time. If you're a member, you have my full attention for all that. Nerdy Dude is a member. He just said the tickets for Bash in Berlin are insane too. It's almost like €900 plus traveling costs. Imagine that. I mean, that's And I know people talked about that for the Scotland show. Shout out once again to Nerdy Dude 24/7. Yeah. Hey, for here, $2.99. We'd love to have your support for more super chats and all that, but whew, that's a big chunk of change. Let's hit a couple other things. So AEW is doing the weekend residency in Arlington at that esports arena. It's about 1,200 people. I think it sounds good. I think the stage is very unique looking. I am interested to see what people think, whether you guys are watching or people that watch it after the fact leave comments. Does that change perception of you? You can tell it's not that big of an arena, but it is loud and they're very into it. And, the stage is different than a big Dynamite taping. Is there any negative effect when you watch that show? I'd love to know people's thoughts on the current Collision setup. Just that alone. I don't want to, you can make the arguments about not enough big name talent are appearing on Collision. That's fine. I'm saying when you see and hear that show, as we've seen the last 2 weeks, it is in a smaller place. Is that affecting your enjoyment of the show at all? Is it enhancing it because the crowd is, while not large, still very with the show? I'd love to know your thoughts on that. Now, yeah, Chris, that looks cool. Makes it feel different. Navy, I like that too. The crowd is good, no effect to me. Okay, so you guys like it. That's good from those who have commented. If you're with it and it sounds good, cool. I'm also a huge fan, as Navy mentioned. I like when things look a little different. I don't like things to look the same all the time. I think it adds to the show when it's not like that. I think it gives it its own personality. Something else they did this weekend. They had a title change at Battle of the Belts. That never happens. And we have new ROH six-man tag champs. It's Dustin and the Von Erichs. Look, they split them, and I saw, there's a lot of rehab work that needs to be done with the six-man titles. I don't think they need 2 sets, the whole Ring of Honor thing, But for those that don't understand, the Von Erich name is as important as it gets in Texas wrestling. And, MLW had them, and now AEW, I don't know if they're signed or whatever it is, but, they've worked there before a couple times. And then they win the six-man tag titles, and they win it there. And there is a draw to that. And I want to talk about, for a little bit here, what they're presenting at these shows. Yes, it's a international product, and I get that. But having as much lucha as they've had, I think they are figuring something out with hologram. There is definitely something about that, and having lucha in Texas, and obviously having a big lucha fan base down there. Having the Von Erichs involved, it's not bad to have that local flavor. And you know what also is something good about this? If you're trying to get something off the ground, put it in a spot where you feel confident about it getting cheered. Like, I remember, whatever it was, like Hit Row's return promo, and their rap happened in Topeka or something like that, or Oklahoma, not exactly the majority of the crowd that's going to be with that. Hologram, the Von Erichs, more of the lucha stuff. Dustin himself. That all plays to the market. It's good to play to the market. It's why you see John Moxley front and center when they're in Ohio or in Cincinnati. Or they have, Britt front and center if they're in Pittsburgh or Penn State area. You do that. It can't work all. You still have the big names on there. Ospreay, of course, is prominently featured on All In stuff, and that's but you feature those people because you play to the hometown market, and it's not WWE in the past. I don't think this is a thing anymore. I hope not. Where they would go, you're at hometown. How many people lost in their hometown under Vince? Where it almost became like a running joke. Oh, God, I hope you don't have a match at home. Play to the market. It is smart strategy. It's rebuilding a little bit in that way. Navy just said, benefiting ROH. Now, the other thing that was brought up, and Tony kind of brought it up on its own, is the idea of calling it AEW Ring of Honor. Would that, does that put better branding on it? AEW is a bigger name than Ring of Honor. Now, the other part is, it's behind a paywall. And it's behind a paywall without major talent appearing on the show on a regular basis. That's always going to be an issue. Am I dropping my $10 for the Honor Club? There's a lot of wrestling out there. It's paying for Peacock. If you want to pay for TNA, obviously paying for cable or streaming service in general. Is it enough to get past stuff? Is it enough to get old stuff? I always felt that WWE Network was a home run because of how much stuff they presented and what you got out of that. Obviously, the pay-per-views alone were worth it because you went from paying $50 to $10. But then you got everything else. Anytime people bitched about that or if the price went up, like that boggled my mind. The amount of stuff you get for that price. And if you're just speaking wrestling, now they're on Peacock and you get everything that Peacock has plus all the WWE stuff. Honor Club it's $10 a month, and it's not the best wrestling that AEW produces for free. That's just a fact. I hope, Christian just brought it up, and Tony said this, I don't think that $10 a month that they're getting from Honor Club is making a big difference in terms of the bottom line of the company. And I say that to say maybe that pops up, if a deal with Warner Brothers, maybe that moves to Max. And it's a fresh programming because a lot of these deals, I'll tell you this, when I was at WWE, Peacock was guaranteed a certain amount, and I think still are, of fresh content, whether it be, I don't know, I guess it doesn't exist anymore, when The Bump was on, Raw Talk, SmackDown Lowdown, like those shows exist because it's part of the deal. Obviously they got pay-per-views, but they got original programming and all that. That could very easily be part of a deal with WBD of, okay, we'll give you our entire back catalog, which has all happened on TBS or TNT anyway. We'll give you all of that and the pay-per-views, and we'll also give you maybe pay-per-views move there, and you just pay for Max. Maybe all of the Ring of Honor stuff moves there, and because it is fresh programming on a weekly basis, that counts. And that's part of the selling point. We can give you even this. And then, you know what? Maybe rebranding does work. Nerdy Dude, you were just asking about, what would you say? I agree, but isn't it also important to appeal to the audience outside of U.S.? Absolutely it is. But I say that because if you think about the local market and selling tickets, and people want to see those wrestlers, you're conditioning the crowd or your audience, whether that's you or anybody else who's not in the Texas market. If you see somebody getting over and getting cheered and it's working, and it starts somewhere where it's a good place to start that will then bleed into other places. If they feature the Von Erichs for the rest of this residency, and it works, and more people are talking about them, and if you guys or anybody watches it live or sees it via social, man, those guys people like them. I hear that people like them. I'm going to get into them more. Well, now you've used your local market to make somebody even bigger. It goes both ways. You have to think small, you have to think domestically, and you have to think internationally. You have to think within the actual market, you have to think to the bigger domestic market, and you have to think to your international market because you want international television deals and distribution deals. And Nerdy Dude, I'm not saying it's going to be on Max for Germany. I'm saying it could be somewhere else in Germany. Those are always different deals. It doesn't always carry over. There is no Fox for WWE on in the UK. SmackDown's on something else. When Netflix moves, that's going to be a much bigger deal because that's Netflix across the board. And yes, I know there's regional, but when it gets there, it's going to reach a lot more people. That's just the fact. And so many people have Netflix. That's why it is such a big deal. That's why it would be such a big deal for AEW to get on Max. I know it gets posted on YouTube. Those deals are all different, but there's levels to how you can get somebody over. So I like the Arlington thing so far. I'm going to save my Darby Danielson conversation for Wednesday because I'd rather it lead right into Dynamite because I have a lot to say on that, and I kind of hinted at it the other day. For those who listened, you can drop Darby's name into everything I said, and then it makes a lot more sense, but I didn't want to spoil it at the time. But Darby winning Royal Rampage on Friday to get him a title shot at Grand Slam, which comes after All In, is very interesting. And I know that Bryan Danielson is going to speak on Wednesday, and he tweeted about it, which he never does. That is going to be a very important promo for All In and beyond. And that's just my prediction. One other thing I wanted to note, it was announced over the weekend that at Revolution Pro, that is a big indie in the UK, that I would say AEW has a good relationship with. I don't know if I'd necessarily call it work. Well, maybe it is working because it was announced, and I know like Orange has worked there and Ospreay's worked there, that on August 11th, MJF is defending his American Championship against Michael Oku on their show. And he brought up how Michael Oku and Will Ospreay have a connection. And you know what? When I heard it, I loved it. You're now building to All In by having MJF in the UK to have a match against somebody that Will Ospreay has worked against and has inspired. And if I'm not mistaken, maybe helped train a little bit. I'm not sure. So you're going to put MJF in the UK in 2 weeks. And if you're putting Max in the UK to have a match, unless they completely miss the boat, and I don't think this will be the case, that means MJF does local promotion for one of the top matches on the show. And that's exactly what you need. And I will not ever, when called upon, Max has done the work for promotion in terms of media. And I would hope that when he's over there, for who knows how long, you'll get to see him on local television or radio shows or whatever, promoting. Rob Dog, do you get paid by them? You don't have to put that comment up because this person has just whined that I haven't said anything positive about WWE other than they've sold 50,000 tickets for SummerSlam. 50,000 tickets. Very impressive. The fact that 2 wrestling shows happening next month are going to sell somewhere in the area of 100,000 seats is fantastic across the board. But Rob, I'm so sorry that the billion-dollar company didn't get a positive comment from me today. Hang in there. Even though it did. Jesus. They don't care about you, just so you know. They care about your money. So, tonight, we have Monday Night Raw on Sci-Fi. I can't wait to hear what Seth has to say about being a referee and his referee's instructions. It's the equivalent of a contract signing, and it's just to further it. I don't know how referee's instructions is selling anything, but to put Punk and Drew and Seth in the same place at the same time is enough. I would love to go, I'm not going to do anything but count the 3. That should be his referee instructions. Don't touch me. I won't touch you. I don't give a shit what you do because you guys should fight everywhere in Cleveland. That should be his referee instructions tonight. I'm there to count 3 or to see that one of you knock the hell out of the other one and they can't continue. That's what I'm there for. And don't fuck with me. That's what his instructions should be tonight. I hope they will be that. And honestly, with the card that's on the table for tonight, that very well could be the main event of the show. It is very unfortunate for WWE that tonight and next Monday, the go home and the show after for SummerSlam are on Sci-Fi. I think they'll do okay, but that's the Olympics thing. It is unfortunate for them that that is the case. It is a bummer that they don't get to sell one of their biggest shows of the year on their primary channel, where they will remain with SmackDown in a couple months. That stinks. That happens. It's unfortunate. But yeah, the Seth Punk thing's the only thing, and they haven't really promoted much with Liv and Rhea and Dom, but it's also, and you think I equate it to WrestleMania week, you don't want to put too many important people in spots where they could possibly get hurt. Yes, you need some physicality in spots in the card, but you want to play it safe, and you also want people to want more. You want to leave everybody tonight going, I gotta be there for all that money, or I gotta watch it, whatever. But it's a go-home week show. Let's see what they do. Their social media will be way more important this week because that show's on Sci-Fi. And they'll do fine with that. And you got NXT tomorrow with Great American Bash, and then Friday SmackDown in town. But we'll talk more about Raw tomorrow. Obviously, we have a lot of stuff coming up this week. Friday, going to be pretty much wall-to-wall Punk. We're going to talk about Brawl Out and the reaction from WWE to when that happened. Wednesday, leading into Dynamite, I have an entire plan for how I think All In will go with the world title leading into October and Wrestle Dream. All about Bryan Danielson and Royal Rampage and Darby and Swerve. And I think they have something pretty special that they could put together between now and October and maybe beyond. We'll get into that. Hopefully you enjoyed my stories of how I found my way into WWE all the way up to when I got hired. We're going to save that for another time because there's much more to talk about there, and I don't want to rush you through it. But make sure you check out our memberships at thewrestlingmatchshow.com. $2.99 is our lowest tier of the memberships, our base tier. There's 3 tiers. It's right above Todd, the mid-card, and the main event. If you sign up right now, starting at just $2.99, you can join us for SummerSlam on Saturday. We think Nerdy Dude 24/7 will be becoming our latest member. We're pushing, we'll be past 4,500 subscribers at some point today. I appreciate all of you for doing that. Go back and check out our archives at thewrestlingmatchshow.com. Check out that membership tab on our YouTube page because you'll find out everything that you get for becoming a subscriber at any tier. But I have to go now because I have to go tape an interview for The Lapsed Fan. Yes, I'll be on that show. But I'll be back with you tomorrow, each and every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And I can't wait to be back to talk about wrestling even more tomorrow and every weekday right here at thewrestlingmatchshow.com.